Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Dasa
Hare
welcomes
Krishna.
you to today's episode of Narada Bhakti Sutra. Today, Suchita ji is not feeling well, so we can quickly bless her. So just make sure she gets better soon. Hare Krishna. So welcome back, Chitra ji.
Thank
So we
you.
can
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So then let's start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So do you remember where we finished last time? What was the key takeaway?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
When we discussed about the processes of the process, when we discussed about the process of bhakti, we again came to know that consistency is the key, and knowledge is there; it will take us there. But intent, vow, and faith with consistency, that is what will attain the grace, make us attain the grace of God, and will help us.
Perfect. Perfect. And Narad Ji also explained the various symptoms as described by various symptoms of bhakti, as described by Ved Vyasa, as described by Shandilya, as described by Garga Muni. So these were the things we covered. So today we can start with Shloka number 19. Nāradaḥ-tu.
And I just wanted to add, Prabhuji, that
Yes.
the goal is to be in Ananda.
Correct. Self-check.
It should lead us to bliss.
Excellent. So self-check, we have to check if we are more blissful than we were before. And that is an indication that we are growing on the path of bhakti. Excellent. Thank you. So let us start with Shloka 19. Nāradaḥ-tu. tad-arpitākhilācāratā. tad-vismaraṇe. parama-vyākulateti.
Parama-vyākulateti.
So let us see what Narad Ji is trying to say here. So according to Sage Narada, these are all very beautiful shlokas now. When all thoughts, words and all deeds are given up to the Lord, and when the least forgetfulness of God makes one intensely miserable, then we can be said to be experiencing divine bhakti. I just gave the translation of this shloka. Now let us go to the explanation. So after explaining the various opinions, Narad Ji just explained about Shandilya Muni, Garga Muni, Vyasa Muni. He explained all their opinions of divine bhakti. Now Narad Ji is talking about his opinion. So Narad Ji basically is emphasizing complete surrender as a symptom of divine love or bhakti. See, Narad Ji says that a person in deep bhakti, they will offer all their actions as sacrifice to God. Do you remember? We discussed something similar in the Bhagavad-Gita. There we said it is called renunciation in action. So as a reminder, it is Shloka 6.1 from the Bhagavad-Gita, where Sri Krishna says, Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiya sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir cha chakriyaha. One who performs one's duties and rightful actions without depending upon the fruit of action is a true sannyasi. And he is of steadfast mind. Not the one who does not handle fire, nor the one who performs no action. This is what Krishna had said in the Bhagavad-Gita 6th chapter, 1st shloka. So what does that mean? There we discussed that the term niragnir means the one who does not handle fire. What does it mean? One does not handle fire. It refers to the renounced beings who depend on alms. they go begging for food, so they don't really cook anything themselves. So that is one of the explanations of the term niragnir. So Lord Krishna is reiterating that the best path for liberation through spiritual growth lies in action without expectation. In other words, renunciation in action. It is not renunciation of action. He is saying you should not be trying to become a sannyasi, giving up everything. So George Feuerstein, he is the one who beautifully summarized this whole shloka as renunciation in action rather than renunciation of action. See, spirituality is not something very unique thing to do. It is not like you cannot go and say, today I'm doing some spirituality. What does that mean? Like you can say I'm doing some exercise, or you can say I'm doing some yoga, but you cannot say I'm doing spirituality. So what does it mean if you say, or if somebody says I'm doing spirituality? What does it mean? Does it mean they are ringing a bell or they are throwing incense sticks to somebody? Spirituality is, this is very important again. So we are going deeper and deeper into these concepts. So spirituality is not something unique we do. It is not a thing. Spirituality is more about how we do whatever we do in our day-to-day lives. That is the teaching of Sri Krishna, and it is similarly repeated by Narada Muni. A great example is Raja Janak. We have discussed his example before. He was a great king and he ruled the kingdom very effectively, and although he had access to enormous amount of wealth, he had everything at his disposal. Money, land, I mean, you name it, he had it. But he was not attached to anything. He was ruling the kingdom, and that entire act of ruling for him was an act of sacrifice to God. He was not expecting anything in return. That is what you mean by renunciation in action. So Raja Janak didn't say, I'm giving up my kingdom, I'm giving up everything, and I'm going to a forest to do bhakti. That's not what he did. He said, I'll stay here, I'll do my duty. But I'm going to do my duty as an offering to God without any attachment. That is one of the very wonderful examples of what Sri Krishna is teaching here. Now, as Sri Krishna, as he is taught in the Bhagavad-Gita, jnana and karma, they should lead us towards bhakti. Please pay attention. Very, very important, profound concept. So, jnana and karma, they should lead us towards bhakti. Now, jnana is the eyes of the karma. So, we need to use our eyes to see and work safely. Without jnana, we cannot perform right action. That is karma. So, when we perform karma with the guidance of jnana, then what does it become? It becomes nishkama karma. And the practice of nishkama karma yoga, that is what leads us towards bhakti. This is exactly what Sri Krishna had taught in the Bhagavad Gita. We are just summarizing it very beautifully here. I hope this makes sense. So to grow in bhakti, we are not expected to give up our day-to-day duties. Instead, we should perform our day-to-day duties in such a manner that it helps us grow in nishkama bhakti. In other words, our day-to-day duties we should be performing as nishkama karma. In the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, Sri Krishna had said, Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad juhoshi, dadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurusha mad arpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer as oblation to the sacred fire, whatever you bestow as a gift, and whatever austerities you perform, O son of Kunti, do them as an offering to me. This was Krishna's instruction to Arjuna. Now, there is a story of Ambarish Maharaj when he was in his mother's womb. At that time, he had heard the recitation of Vishnu Sahasranama. Vishnu Sahasranama is 1000 names of Vishnu, and he was so touched by it that he began to meditate on the Lord Vishnu right then, in the womb itself. And when Ambarish Maharaj was born, he already had the knowledge and devotion of a great devotee. And he still went on to become a great king. And he remained a devotee of Lord Vishnu. So Narad Ji explains that the symptom of Ananya Bhakti and divine love is that you are doing your bhakti, first of all, regardless of your age, regardless of the place, and regardless of the time. And when we catch ourselves in a moment, even a moment if we catch ourselves where we are not focusing on God, or when we feel like we have forgotten God, even for a moment, if you catch yourself forgetting God, then you should be experiencing what Narad Ji says as parama-vyākulateti. That is what is in the Shloka. The word parama-vyākulateti is a compound word in Sanskrit. These are two words. Parama means supreme or highest, and Vyakulata means agitation or disturbance. So the combined meaning of parama-vyākulateti would be supreme agitation or highest disturbance. It is usually this word is usually used to describe a state of extreme emotional or mental disturbance. But Narad Ji says we should have this parama-vyākulateti whenever we catch ourselves forgetting God or not focusing on God. So as you can see, the symptoms of divine love that Narad Ji is explaining, that kind of encompasses all the symptoms given by Ved Vyasa, Shandilya and Garga Muni. So it's kind of encompassing. He's kind of summarizing everything. Anybody has any questions, or shall we go ahead with the next Shloka? Shloka 20. Okay, thumbs up. So Shloka 20 says, Astyeva mevam.
Eva mevam.
Yeah, Astyeva mevam, correct. So that means Narad Ji says that all previous symptoms of divine love described by various sages are correct. It is like this. It is indeed like this. That is what Narad Ji is saying in this Shloka. It's a very short word, but this is what it means. We can see such a sentiment in the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Shishtakshakam as well. I hope you remember Shishtakshakam. We discussed it even during the previous session, one of the Shlokas from there. Otherwise, I will send you the link. You can read all the 8 Shlokas of the Shishtakshakam that is supposedly written by Chaitanya Maharaj himself. What is the particular verse we are talking about from Shishtakshakam is Yugayitam Nimisena Chakshusa Pravsayitam Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahena Me. What it means is, oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like an entire yuga. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. As described earlier, we can engage in divine bhakti by various means. It is not necessary that you have to do certain things like puja or idol worship. I mean, nothing is compulsory. It's not like divine worship is possible only if you do a certain thing. There are various ways to engage in divine bhakti. Like if you're a singer, you can just go sing and dedicate your singing to God. If you're a dancer, dance for God. If you're a chef, when you're cooking, you cook as if God is going to eat your food. So that should be the bhav. So another aspect to consider is that as long as we are engaging in ritualistic aspects of karma khanda, in other words, if I say this mantra, I'm going to get this benefit. Like if I want money, I have to say this mantra. If I have a son, I have to say. As long as we are in that mode, then you have to be very careful, because then the mantras have to be perfectly uttered, the pronunciation matters, the tone of the mantra matters, the intent matters, the time you say the mantra matters. Everything has to be perfect if you are going to treat that as a ritual that's going to give you something. Like in other words, if you're going to treat the universe like a machine where you put in something and you get something back, then you better be perfect in what you do. Only then you're going to get the expected outcomes. Otherwise, the outcomes are not going to be what you expect. However, when you are practicing bhakti, when you are in the mode of bhakti, where whatever you are doing, you are offering as a sacrifice to God. In other words, even when you are chanting a mantra, you are not doing it because you are going to get some immediate benefit. You are chanting that mantra to please God. If that is your bhav, then it doesn't matter if you are making a mistake in pronunciation, or if your ucharan is not right, or if you are saying the mantra at the wrong time. Those things don't matter. See, I hope that makes sense, right? A great example of what we are discussing now is Valmiki. Just give me a thumbs up if you have heard about Valmiki. Great. Anish, can you tell us what you heard about Valmiki?
So Valmiki was this man. He was a thief, because of his bad karma accumulated from his past life. And then he came across the sage. So, like, he was so impure that he even couldn't just say the words Rama. He couldn't even say Rama. So, the sage told him to do something else. Since he couldn't say Rama, they told him to say, instead of Rama, Mara. And believe it or not, after a lot of that, well, he actually started to become pure.
Excellent. Excellent. Super excellent. He's pretty much summarized the story. So that's the exact story. So Valmiki, he was a dacoit. He was a thief. Why he was a thief? Because he was living in poverty and his family was growing and he didn't know how to feed them. So he became a thief and a dacoit. So he used to go and hurt people and rob from people basically but his intent was to feed his family. And once Narad Ji passes by in the jungle and he attacks Narad Ji. And then Narad Ji starts singing the glories of the Lord, and that kind of seems to attract. So his name was Ratnakara. Before he became Valmiki, he was Ratnakar or Ratnakara, however you want to pronounce it. So Ratnakar was pretty touched by the devotional singing of Narad Ji and he seeks his guidance. So Narad Ji tells him, do one thing, Ratnakar, go to your family and ask each of them if they are willing to take the bad karma from you, the bad karma that you have generated, to feed them. You are telling me that you became a dacoit because you had to feed your family, right? Now go to the same family and ask them who is going to or who is willing to take some of the bad karma from you. So he goes and he calls each one of his family members and asks them, hey, I have been doing all these bad deeds to feed you guys, but can you take my bad karma? And everybody says, no, nobody wants to take his bad karma. And he's pretty shocked. He's shaken. That's kind of a reality check for him on what is the nature of human relationship. It's so selfish, so pointless. So then he goes back to Narad Muni and says, you opened my eyes. Now tell me what I should do. How can I purify myself? Then Narad Ji, as Anish Ji very beautifully said, Narad Ji says, if you want to purify yourself and grow in Bhakti, you have to take the name of Lord Rama. But because he was so deep in sin, he couldn't say Rama. So Narad Ji says, okay, you can say Mara, because Mara basically means either, if you say Mara, it means dead. If you say Mara, it means to actually hit. But these things made sense to Valmiki because he was a dacoit at that time. So he said, okay, I can say Mara. And eventually, when you say Mara, 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 it kind of becomes Ram Ram eventually. So he is sitting and he meditates on that for many, many, many years. And by the time Narad Ji comes back to that place, he is covered with an ant hill. I mean, he has been so focused and his intent has been so pure that he is not shaken from that place. And he has been continuously saying Ram, 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 Ram. And an ant hill has come all over him. So then that is when Narad Ji removes the ant hill. Valmika basically means ant hill. So because he was covered in Valmika, after the ant hill is removed, he becomes Valmiki. So as Anish Ji rightly pointed out, and as we were just discussing, it didn't matter if he was saying Rama or Mara, because the intent was to just please the Lord. And eventually he became enlightened by just saying Mara. So the intent matters. The opposite is also true. If we are very proud of our intellect, even today there are such people. They are very proud of their intellect. If you ask them about Bhagavad-Gita, they will proudly say, I can recite all 700 shlokas by heart. There's nothing wrong in remembering that, definitely. It's a beautiful thing if you can remember, but we should not get into a mode of pride. Because if you think that by reciting these shlokas, you are going to get some spiritual growth, that is not the right approach. Just like that, this is what pretty much Lord Krishna was telling Arjuna in the Bhagavad-Gita is, don't get too hung up on the karma kanda, those kind of rituals, because that is the moha kalilam. it is going to get you deeper and deeper into the forest of delusion, because it's a very complex mechanism. You make a mistake here, that creates an offset here, and then you try to correct that, you land up with something else, and it goes on and on and on. I hope this all makes sense. So see, Ramakrishna used to tell his disciples that the mother loves her child, a chaste wife loves her husband, the miser loves his wealth. Let your love for God be as intense as all of these combined. Then you shall see him. That is the message of Ramakrishna. Such a beautiful message. See, all of us here, we are fathers and mothers and husbands and wives. We all understand our love for our near and dear ones, right? We love our son, we love our daughter, we love our husband, we love our whatever wife. But how much do we love our God? So Ramakrishna says, can you combine all this love together? That has to be your highest love. It's love to God. That's what Ramakrishna is saying. He's saying when you can do that, then you get closer to God. In the next shloka, Narad Ji is going to quote another perfect example. It's a beautiful example. So let's go through that shloka. Feel free to unmute, recite, and then we can mute again. Ready?
यथा
Ready? Okay. Yatha
यथा
vraja
Vraja
व्रज
gopikanam.
गोपिका
Excellent. What does that mean? Just like the gopis of Vraja. Now Narad Ji is giving this beautiful example. After explaining the concept, he's saying, like the gopis. So Narad Ji explains that the gopis of Vraj, they are very advanced bhakti yogis. The bhakti of the gopis, they have been glorified by many saints and sages throughout the ages. There is no other example that can compare to the divine love exhibited by the gopis. It is said that this bhakti of those gopis was so advanced that they did not even have a slight tinge of self-interest. They were always immersed in their love for Sri Krishna. Their only goal was to make Sri Krishna happy. Now, although they lived in their homes, they performed their household duties. Their minds were always constantly fixed on Krishna. Renunciation in action, there is no better example of that. So these gopis were not like abandoning their household duties, or some of them were married, they didn't abandon their husbands. They did everything that they had to do. Yet they kept their mind constantly focused on Sri Krishna. And these gopis demonstrated parama-vyākulateti whenever they felt the absence of Sri Krishna, even for a second. So that is why Narad Ji says the best example is this gopis, because whatever he said has been demonstrated by those gopis. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, there is a very beautiful shloka that says, Ta man manaska mat prana mat arte tyakta daihika mam eva daitam preshtam atmanam manasa gata e tyakta loka dharmascha mad arte tan bhibharmi aham. The minds of those gopis are always absorbed in me, and their very lives are ever devoted to me. For my sake, they have abandoned everything related to their bodies, renouncing ordinary happiness in life, as well as religious duties necessary for such happiness in the next life. I alone am their dearmost beloved, indeed, their very self. Now watch what Krishna says after saying this. Krishna is saying, I personally sustain such devotees who for my sake give up all worldly desires and ways of life. I know there is another shloka which sounds similar to this. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paripasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. The same thing Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad-Gita also. That when we focus entirely on Krishna, Ananya Bhakti, and we are willing to give up worldly desires for him, Krishna says, I personally sustain such devotees. And the next thing that Krishna says is very profound. Krishna says, he tells this to the gopis. For this pure love of yours, even if I serve you all for an entire lifetime of Lord Brahma, my debts will not be cleared. If you, out of your large-heartedness, release me from this huge indebtedness, then alone can I be relieved of my obligation to you. See, that is the power of true bhakti and divine love. Even the Lord feels indebted to you. How profound is that? आपने भगवान को ऋणी बना दिया. It's like, so powerful. That is the whole power of selfless love and nishkama karma. I think we probably have time for one more shloka. What do you say? Thumbs up. Okay. So let us do shloka
Yes.
22 also. Tat-prapina
Pratina
mahatmya
Mahat
Mahatmana
jnana
Jnana
vismritya pavadah.
Vismritya pavada.
Okay, let us see what that means. Although worshipping Krishna as their lover, the gopis never forgot his God nature. Very important. See, a lot of people with half knowledge, this is one of the reasons we have not yet started reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because in order to read and understand Srimad Bhagavatam, we need to first progress on the path of bhakti. We need to purify our mind, purify our heart. Only then most of the Srimad Bhagavatam will make sense to us and we will be able to understand it in the right context. That is the reason, although I have read the Bhagavatam, in other words, I have had the books with me, I am not diving into it because this is the whole reason. Because in Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto talks about the Krishna Leelas, the Rasa Leelas. So people with half knowledge, they directly jump into that and they will pick things out of context and they are like, oh, Krishna had girlfriends and Krishna had this. And so we don't even want to deal with all of that because people don't understand what they are talking about. So that is why here Narad Ji is explaining about the love of these gopis. So it's very important. So Narad Ji is saying that although these gopis were having so much love for Krishna, they never forgot the godlike nature of Krishna. Now, many students of Bhagavatam, they have a misunderstanding that gopis were just physical lovers of Krishna. But that is not true. Because in the Bhagavatam itself, you will find many verses which clearly proves or provides evidence of the Lord's divinity which was experienced by the gopis, even when they were living in their humble homes in Vraja and performing their humble household chores. But people don't read that entire thing. So the gopis had a very clear knowledge of the glory and divinity of Sri Krishna's true nature. So there is something called as the Gopi Geet. There is a song that these gopis sing. The Gopi Geet, there is this stanza. Na khalu gopika nandano bhavan akila dehinam antaratma druk vikana sartito vishwaguptaye saka udeyivan satvatam kule. That is a Gopi Geet, part of Gopi Geet. What that means is, you are not actually the son of Yashoda, O friend, but rather the indwelling witness in the hearts of all embodied souls. Because Lord Brahma prayed for you to come and protect the universe, you have now appeared in the Satvata dynasty. The Satvata dynasty, basically, so Satvata was a king and he was an ancestor of Krishna's Yadu dynasty. But this is sung by the gopis themselves. So that demonstrates clearly that the gopis very well understood that Krishna was not just a boy, he was not just an ordinary human being, that he was God incarnate. So in spite of knowing they were God incarnate, why did the gopis be part of the Leela, Ras Leela? That is because they forget this fact that he is God himself temporarily by the power of Yoga Maya. But why does that forgetfulness happen because of Yoga Maya? So that they can enjoy the Madhurya Bhava of God, or Madhurya Bhava of God. Madhurya Bhava is a term used to refer to the attitude of feeling devotion towards God as a lover or beloved. When that kind of a devotion comes, that is called Madhurya Bhava. So it is one of the 9 primary bhavas. I think Anika ji had mentioned this when we were studying Bhagavad-Gita. I don't know if she still remembers that. I'm not going to ask you a question. Anika ji, you are on mute.
I remember a few. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu-smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Dasyam, Sakyam.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So what you are saying, they are all types of devotional activities. Very good. Both youngsters have totally impressed us. And when it comes to just emotions or the bhavas, there are 9 primary emotions or bhavas in Bhakti Yoga. So the first one is Shanti Bhava, a peaceful and calm state of mind in which devotee experiences the divine source as inner peace. So when you relate to God as the inner peace, that is Shanti Bhava. Then you have Dasya Bhava. Dasya Bhava, Dasya means servant. So where the devotee experiences the divine as the master and the devotee is the servant. That kind of devotion is Dasya Bhava. Then you have Sakhya Bhava, where it is friendship, where you look at God as your friend and you kind of experience devotion that way. And then you have Vatsalya Bhava. Vatsalya Bhava is parental love, where the devotee thinks the God is their child, that kind of a bhava. Then is Madhurya Bhava, which is looking at God as a lover. Then is Bhakti Bhava, where devotee experiences the Lord as something divine and just has to be worshipped. Then we have Adbhuta Bhava, where you are always in amazement of the divine, like he's just so amazing. That kind of amazement is Adbhuta Bhava. And then we have Shanta Bhava, where, so that we already discussed. Then we have Atma Nivedana Bhava, which is the feeling of complete surrender and self-offering to the God. That is Atma Nivedana. So these are all the various bhavas, because we look at the gopis and we say, oh, Madhurya Bhava, but that is not the only bhava. These are so many bhavas. I'll send the notes to you. So these bhavas, they are not mutually exclusive. In other words, it's not that one person should have only one of these bhava at any given time. That is not how it works. They can be experienced in different combinations, and there is no linear progression as well. I mean, it is not that one of them is superior to the other. There is no such thing. Sometimes you can feel Shanta Bhava, sometimes you can feel Vatsalya Bhava, sometimes you can feel Sakhya Bhava. As long as they are all directed towards God, all these bhavas are possible. You just have to identify them. The ultimate goal is to reach a state of complete devotion and surrender to the divine. That is the ultimate stage. This is what the concluding statements of the Bhagavad-Gita was also. Lord Krishna was saying that. Surrender everything. When you can have that kind of ultimate surrender, that is the ultimate state that you have to aim for. So I think this much is sufficient for today. Hare Krishna.